Here's a thought. I think as an entrepreneur, you need the stability of some sort of structure. I think it has to be certain people. I think it's certain ways of living. I think it's even the way you wake up and what you do in the morning, the way you take some exercise. I think
Yeah.
you've got to have some sort of substructure there
Yeah.
because after that, everything is chaos, frankly. And that actually is fine because that is where you find the possibilities.
Welcome to Push to Be More with me, your host, Matt Edmondson. This is a show that talks about the stuff that makes life work. And to help us do just that, I am chatting with my very great friend and guest today, Simon O'Shaughnessy, all the way from the other side of the world. We're going to be talking about life as a perpetual entrepreneur, the importance of your core values and making meaning, amongst other things, I have no doubt. Now, the notes and transcripts from our conversation will be available on the website, pushtobemore.com. Also, whilst you're there on the website, you can sign up for our newsletter. And each week we will email you the links from the show, the notes. They all get sent straight to your inbox automatically. It's totally free. And so make sure you sign up for that. Now, this episode is brought to you by Orion Media, which helps entrepreneurs and business leaders set up and run their own successful podcast. You know what, Chief? I just say, by the way, let me just say, clarify. When I say Chief, I mean Simon. I've always called him Chief. You'll find out why. You know what? I've found running my own podcast to be super, super rewarding. It opens doors to amazing people like nothing else I've seen. I've built networks, made friends, and had a platform to champion my customers, my team, and my suppliers. And I think just about every entrepreneur or business leader should have a podcast because it has had a huge impact on my own business. Of course, that sounds great in theory, but in reality, there's the whole problem of setup, distribution, getting the tech right, knowing what the right podcast strategy is, and so on and so forth. You see, I love to talk. I know I do. It obviously goes without saying, but I don't like all the other stuff. So Orion Media takes it all off my plate. I do what I love, talking, and they take care of the rest brilliantly. So if you're wondering if a podcast is good for your marketing strategy and for your business, why not connect with them at orionmedia.com. That's AURION media.com. We will, of course, link to them on our podcast website as well, and the link will be in the show notes if you're signed up to the email. So thank you, Orion Media, for sponsoring this podcast. And that's check that out. Yeah. So let's talk about Simon. Now, Simon has spent over 40 years of creating and delivering projects and figuring out this whole entrepreneurial thing. He started out life as a dentist, moved into the sunbed industry, which is when I started working for him, and eventually the health spa game. He sold it all and moved to New Zealand. Now he creates change and development in people's lives and their businesses with one-to-one coaching and mentoring. He's also, ironically, come full circle. He's been doing a lot of short-term change assignments in the health sector. So we started out as a dentist and now he runs kind of medical practices in New Zealand. So Simon, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. Thanks for joining me. I'm really excited about this episode, by the way.
Thank you, Matt. Was that magically a few minutes ago?
Yeah.
Sure I heard you say
Yeah, automatically. It comes automatically. It's such a great word, isn't it?
Automatically, it sounds like most of my career.
Yeah.
Automatically, I'm not quite sure how we got here, but here we are. Yeah.
You should put it on your business cards. Automatically.
Yes, it doesn't go down well with the linear people. Which actually, bizarrely, before you ask a question, I think is always the confrontation between an entrepreneur and business. In that, entrepreneurs, and I suppose I am one because I seem to keep doing stuff all the time.
You can't escape.
And someone asked me the other day, is it always original? And I thought, embarrassingly, it probably is.
Yeah.
I've got the idea from somewhere, I've synergized something together, but actually, in the end of the day, the output is original. which sounds sort of a bit posy, really, but I think that is what entrepreneurs do. They sort of create something, a step
Yeah.
that actually suddenly changes an industry or a product or something like that. But gosh, they're not liked by the establishment.
Nor
You know,
promoted, I feel.
no, no. I mean, I always remember, I mean, if I was thinking back to early days, it was a long time ago, the things you remember are calls from the bank, like, when will we expect more funds, Mr. O'Shaughnessy? Very, very annoying questions like that for an entrepreneur
Yeah.
who's, surely things can just hurry on. Have I got to have structure? Oh, okay,
Yeah. What's
this
that
sort of
all
thing.
about?
Yeah. So I think the more I think about it, the more my life has been about actually protecting that sense of self, that individual person that tends to want to do this. And um, I'm on a creativity course at the moment, which is bizarre, which is a wonderful course with about 60 people internationally, and most of it work is done early morning because people are in different time zones.
Yeah.
But a lot of what I'm hearing in the creativity course is just the same as I think being an entrepreneur. These amazing people are making golden kangaroos in Australia, and our stand-up comics in New York, and writers and all sorts of
Yeah.
things. But actually, the process is very similar, which is rooted in confidence that you are okay, despite, and most people will chip away to make you fit a shape, fit a box. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's very difficult to accept there is a box.
Yeah.
You don't think, it's not that you're being posy. I'll reverse that comment. And it's more, you just don't think in terms of boxes. You don't think in terms of being contained. There's always possibility. Um, there's always a chance to make something different somewhere. And so you sort of you sort of wrestle with that hope, and you have to actually learn quite a lot of resilience to deal with the naysayers, the structurists, and then you need to learn to work with them and act, because you can't do it all. I mean, that's the other classic thing I think you can see in entrepreneurism is this naivety to believe that because it's your idea, you should be able to deliver everything.
Yeah.
And I think that is small thinking, and usually doomed to failure quite quickly. Yeah.
I get
So
that because I do
yeah,
get that that sort of thinking which says, you know what, I have this idea, I know what I'm doing, therefore I'm going to go ahead and do it. And actually, part of the thing that I've had to learn over the years is actually letting go of that and letting people loose and bringing other people in and helping champion their cause, and that's not easy to do.
no,
I don't think it's particularly easy to do. I think part of it is ego. Part of it is actually at this particular point in time, I think I could probably do a better job. And so it's easier for me to do it than it is to let you loose, and train you and go through
yes.
all that pain. There are lots of reasons, aren't there? And it's a really interesting one. Have you had to wrestle with that yourself through these sort of 40 odd years?
I was sort of thinking again, for this podcast about my early life, and I think you're so blasé and unconnected. Actually, if seriously, I think so. I was certainly so unconnected. I think I had this sense. I think this is the other strange thing about being an entrepreneur. Your core senses are probably intuitive.
Yeah.
You've probably got a skill set somewhere. Mine was sciences and understanding holistic principles. That actually that living things didn't actually work sequentially. So I think my basis underneath it was this sort of belief anyway that things would evolve, which is probably quite helpful to being an entrepreneur. so I don't think I fought with it. I think I fought with it more later in life. I mean, a very good friend of mine. I just got this recent gig to help sort out quite a complicated medical centre that's fallen apart. And when I was talking to one of my best friends, she said to me, she said, just a question. She said, have you got anyone to sort the detail out for you? and and I thought, bless her, she knows me so well that actually, detail. Oh, right.
Yeah, what's that?
What's that? I can read a spreadsheet. I can read a profit and loss. I know, but am I interested? Not really.
No.
not,
Does it
not
drive
really.
you? No, not really.
No, not really. I think one of the most helpful things I did, and I wish I'd done it many years younger, was actually a really good personality profile. When I did an HBDI one, which is nice because it's got colours and it's got shapes. It seemed
Always
interesting,
helps.
right?
Always helps.
Yes, not a lot of words. It was actually quite helpful. And when I did that about, I think about 2002, 2003, and my profile was so empathetic, creative,
Yeah.
and so processed and detailed and analytical. I mean, the examiner, the profiler, only said one thing to me. He said, "Look at that." He said, "That's world class. Do more." And I
Yeah.
think that was the most powerful thing I've ever heard. Do more. It almost gave me permission,
Yeah.
to sort of be myself. But
Yeah.
equally, I showed it to my daughter who has got psychology, and she looked at it and went, "Oh, Dad, you just don't care, do you?" And this was the other side of the profile.
Yeah.
I mean, she was laughing too, which I suppose if I tumble forward here with you, Matt, that goes on to having the right people with you.
Yeah.
This is learning curve is to understand that as an entrepreneur, you are not a superhero. You have got a special set of skills which will take you somewhere in life, but you blooming well need the rest of the people around you to make
Yeah.
something of it. And I
Yeah.
think that profiling, I mean, if I'd seen that before I started dentistry, I wouldn't have been a dentist.
Would you have did? I was going to say you wouldn't have gone. There's just not.
I'd be like, well, Matt, what sort of colour teeth would you like to do? That would look great.
Do you want to keep your teeth in your mouth? I don't know. Do you want to move them out? They don't need to be there if you don't want them.
There are other concepts and possibilities. I mean, it's not the sort of person you want to see as a dentist, is it?
Yeah.
Or bless them, the people I deal with mostly now, the doctors. I mean, amazing people that have a skill that actually works through process and analysis and logic, and has enough empathy to be with you, but not to be lost in you, and then actually creates. This is the journey we'll go on. I mean, that's what you want.
Yeah.
When you see that sort of person.
Yeah.
It's unlikely you'll get that with most entrepreneurs. They might think, by the way, that they can do it all. They have this because you sort of can adapt. I know I can adapt. If you force me to look at an Excel spreadsheet or do something in numbers or something like that, yes, no, I can do it. Do I enjoy it? No. Am I really good at it? No. No. I mean, there are people I usually try and have around me that just can do it and love it.
Yeah.
And that makes life better. So perhaps that's the other thing. Finding a team and actually being able to collaborate, I think, are essential features of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think the longer I do this game, the more I realize actually as an entrepreneur, my skills need to lie in one, having not necessarily a clear vision, but at least some understanding of where I want to go to, of what the future looks like, and galvanizing a team to join me on that journey. And in some respects, to take me on that journey, and focusing more and more on team and less on the other stuff seems to pay dividends. But I didn't know that 20 years ago.
No, I don't think being an entrepreneur is an individualistic sport. You know, I mean, I played rugby, but I wasn't interested. I ended up on the squash court because I liked it because it was me. You know, so there was always that. There is this strong individualistic drive going on in an entrepreneur, but absolute folly if you think that will take you consistently on through the way. You'll
Yeah.
crash and burn somewhere
Yeah.
because actually the pressure, I think the pressure is quite high with being an entrepreneur. I think your resilience has to be very good, and I
Yeah.
think you have to know yourself very well. Um,
What do you what do you mean when you use this word resilience a couple of times now? What do you
mm,
understand by
mm,
that word?
mm. I think there's a classic definition, isn't it, that you overcome the turbulence of the day, you know?
Mm.
But I think it's deeper than that. I think it starts in a core sense of knowing. And that's not something that happens over, you can't read a book on resilience and go, da da
I'm resilient.
da, I'm resilient now, you know. You can get some ideas, but resilience is found under pressure, isn't it? Pressure comes and you find your resilience. I'm watching at the moment, Patty's got me to watch Limitless
Ah,
with
with
Chris
Chris
Hemsworth.
Hemsworth. I was literally watching that earlier on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was watching the
I,
fasting
I,
one.
I don't normally go for programs like that, but I started watching and I thought, oh, this is interesting. This is a man teaching himself resilience. I mean, just watched him do an Arctic swim
Yeah.
where he had to halfway through because he was dying halfway through. That was a death spin in the water. He had to put his mind back in to the frame of what he was told by the expert, and that's resilience because he actually adopted a different line of thinking that actually allowed him to move forward past where he was into success in this case. So I think resilience sort of looks like that to me. I think I think for me it also is being able to deal with volume. I mean, at the moment, being if you like, an administrative manager, leader of a practice or practice, you get bombarded. No one comes and goes, "How are you today?" They're not interested who you are. It's like, solve my problems,
Yeah.
fix this for me now. And so you'll literally get five people in a row asking for something to be fixed.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to be able to cope with that as an entrepreneur as well. There are multiple parts moving. So some of them you're not quite sure why they're moving, but it seems a good idea. You know, I'm sure it will end up somewhere.
Yeah.
Which is back to my holistic idea that actually you've got to allow this ambiguity going on. If something's going to be created, it won't all add up. You know, and there'll be stuff happening, and you've got to have a mind, a resilience
Yeah.
of mind that accepts that,
Yeah.
and that's not true of everyone. Some people would find it really annoying,
Yeah.
and a person will go, well, let's fix that, and then let's fix this, and let's fix that. I mean, the most linear I've ever been, because if I had my desk when we worked together,
Yeah.
I had one pile over here, and that pile would end up over here. So I knew I'd done that pile or
Yeah.
whatever it was. I mean, that was me attempting to actually be methodical and linear because I didn't want to upset the people around me. And things were going to get progressed in the time
Yeah.
scale that they need.
Yeah.
But but my mind isn't like that. My thinking process isn't like that. And I I have a tolerance for ambiguity, which allows me to have multiple things just there, and and I'm not too bothered about it because eventually something will come forward and fit.
Yeah. Do you find then with that? Because I get what you mean when you walk into the office and everyone says, right, here's my problem. I need a solution for this, 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 and this. And you're like, well, whoa, steady on, Tiger. And I remember a couple of months ago, you'll remember this story. Sharon had a breast cancer scan. And I remember it was quite an interesting time for us, obviously, as a husband and a wife dealing with this concept. The first time we had to deal with it. And what was interesting to me was it was really the first time in a while that I'd noticed that the first thing people do when they see you is go, right, I need something from you, and try and suck something out of you. And at that particular point in time, I just needed someone to put their hand up and go, Matt, how are you doing? Do you know what I mean? And it was that kind of, and it felt in some respects a little bit isolated and a little bit lonely. But fortunately, I have people that I can talk to. We chat regularly. You know, I've got a good friend Tony and stuff over here that I chat to, and so it was a really interesting point for me to notice that actually when you're a leader, when you're the entrepreneur, when you're the person at the top of the pyramid, maybe at the bottom of the pyramid if we invert it, but maybe that's a conversation for another day. But it's wherever you are in the hierarchy, it's very difficult, I think, for those that you lead to ask you how you're doing and for you to be vulnerable and say, oh, this is how I'm doing, right? I don't know if you have found that in your entrepreneurial walk. And so if so, how have you built this resilience? Have you had people to talk to?
I was actually in the back of my mind thinking about leadership, and I think this is probably where I'm going at the moment with this to answer your question. I think part of being an entrepreneur is learning to be a leader. And a leader is not the old idea of a leader that is untouchable and that has got all the answers. It's actually someone that works or is prepared to work in the front line, that understands what the real problems are and has enough capacity to actually take on other people and other people's problems. But somewhere in that, for me anyway, there is the spark and the joy, So, I mean, I had a heavy day yesterday with all sorts of stuff happening, but the joy was in 2 or 3 distinct moments, which could have gone pear-shaped, but actually ended up, one delightfully with an older lady was a hug, and she said at the end of this very difficult conversation, she said, well, if we could, I wouldn't mind a hug. And I mean, I was already there because I thought she had been brilliant, and I thought she had coped with a really difficult situation. So I think for me, I find the sustenance in people. I mean, my core values are change, creativity, and people. And I have got a number of people that I will really open up to, and have conversations with. As a couple, we've always had one couple over years, which is bizarrely now in New Zealand as well. But I mean, if we wanted to go and see someone, we would go and see them, and we would perhaps only see them once a year, because they live a little way away. But I mean, we're there straight away, So I think we've all got to have that. But I think for me, part of my resilience is day-to-day enjoyment of people, and you go, oh, that was wonderful. We touched, we've dealt with something difficult. We've worked through it. We've been human, and we've been normal, and that works. I mean, I couldn't be an entrepreneur that was just locked up in a room with a computer. I'd just go nuts.
The new modern entrepreneur.
Yeah, as you know, up north, and it was quite rural. I don't know why we bought this house that was rural.
Oh, it was stunning and it was beautiful and the location was phenomenal. I can see why you fell in love with it. Yeah.
yeah. But if I thought about it, I'm
It
going,
wasn't
so
practical, but yeah, I mean,
no, not practical at all. But there you go. That's the life of an entrepreneur sometimes, isn't it? Like that. Let's do that. Let's see what we can create. So lovely, a joy, but also, sheep and cows.
yeah.
No people. Or if you did meet people, how are you today? Mhm. That's a good idea, isn't it? What do you think of this? "Hmm." It's not exactly sort of in-depth help for yourself.
Yeah.
And after 2 or 3 days, I mean, Patty used to look at me and go and find some people, will you? Could you go away for a day and go and find some people?
Yeah.
Because actually that for me is the sustenance.
Mm.
That makes a difference. I think that's why. Well, my background, as I said to you, is biochemistry and organics and things like that. So I think I've always thought holistically,
Mm.
and I've always thought there has to be human value somewhere
Yeah.
for me. Anything I create,
Mm.
it has to create change, and it has to be something that someone goes, "Wow, look, I want to do that." But it's that sort of part of it that
Mm.
becomes interesting. Um, of course, once that happens, I'm bored, and
We need the next thing. But how did you see, it's interesting you say that, right? And you talk about it has to be this and it has to be that for me to be interested. And then once it's done, it's bored. You didn't start off your entrepreneurial journey knowing that, I'm assuming. And it took a little bit
no.
of space and time to work that out. So how did you, I guess in some respects, start to understand that? How did you figure out your core values and this is what made you tick? What was that
Mm,
journey like?
mm, mm. I had a couple of people to help me. One was actually a very unusual man who was semiotic specialist. That's
Mm,
the person that creates the signs and ambience in say a shop. So
mm,
when you walk into an Apple shop, you know it's an Apple shop because everything is set out and engineered for the interactions that they
mm,
want in that shop. So it's very cleverly designed.
mm,
And we went off for a period of time and we thought, well, can you do that to people? Can you actually find the buttons, the things that are important, that if you will, their brand, I
mm,
suppose. Because we do have a brand,
mm,
but quite distinctly, and actually to enjoy that brand is, I think, part of being resilient
mm.
as an entrepreneur. So you always take the mickey out of me. I'm always wearing Ted Baker. I mean, you could probably tell me the brand of shoes I'm wearing. Don't say it. And things like that right now, because
Mhm.
that there are certain things that I do, and it's not posy. It's actually part of me
Mm,
to be definitive and delineated,
mm.
and it actually stops thinking about it again.
Yeah.
Because I need. Here's a thought. I think as an entrepreneur, you need the stability of some sort of structure. I
Mm,
think it has to be certain people. I think it's certain ways of living. I think it's even the way you wake up and what you do in the morning, the way you take some exercise. I think
yeah.
you've got to have some sort of substructure there
Yeah.
because after that, everything is chaos, frankly. And
Mm,
that actually is fine because that is where you find the possibilities. Now, I didn't know any of that when I started. I mean, I
mm.
just thought, well, that's a good idea. Let's have a go at that. I'm sure that will work. You know, and you know, probably been luckier to get successes rather than failures.
Mm.
But then, and again, you deliver a real dozo. You go, well, looks nice. It has the framework that could have worked.
Yeah.
And there's probably a lot of you in it, but you go, yeah, but no cigar. No,
Yeah.
no one's interested. And then you go, well, okay, that's fine. It's not a big problem, and you move on.
Mm.
Um, Going back, I think, to what you asked a little bit clearer, did I know there was this sort of churn, yes, going on. No, no. It's. I'm very lucky to be married to a woman that copes with it, and actually hasn't got a prop. She actually sees it as excitement, as adventure. You know, so we've been lived in so many different places, so many different houses, and we've made decisions. You sit in bed at night and you sort of say, I've been thinking about New Zealand. I've been thinking about New Zealand too, and really you're halfway down the flight path
Yeah.
to leaving,
Yeah.
because it was already there. But I think you've got to be very lucky to be with someone like that. I mean, I remember when we came to live to Liverpool, that literally was a bedtime conversation. And 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 I said, look, I've been thinking about this, love. What do you think? And she just burst into tears, and she said, I've been thinking about it too. you know, and that it was like I didn't want to think about it, but I have been thinking about it. And actually, I know that you know that I know that we should come.
Yeah.
And it will be a major shift. We'll leave our business behind, which is not such a clever thing to do when you've got shops and things like that. You go, let's move 172 miles away.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
That'll work.
Before the internet, before mobile phones, it'll be fine.
Yes, yes. The card index will still work fine, I'm sure. I think we had a fax machine. We did have a fax machine.
You did?
Shortly
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah.
That was a stunning
I remember walking
invention.
into your house actually the first time and seeing the fax machine and going, "Ooh, they've got a fax machine."
Yes. Shiny.
Ooh.
And the buttons go dee 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 dee.
Yeah.
We don't know what we do. We like the buttons.
Yeah. You know what? Half the audience listening to this podcast are going, "Bloody hell, it was a fax machine."
Do you know, I tell you, someone that still has faxes, medical practices.
Really? Oh yeah, they do. Yeah.
Stunningly, when I walked into this medical practice pre-COVID, there were these great, chunky, expensive fax machines, and it's because they thought they were the only secure way to send information. So they sent it down the fax line. I mean, that's all changed now because we don't want paper. We don't want to touch things. We do things electronically, but they didn't want to change.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
We trust the fax machine.
Yeah.
Interesting, eh?
Yeah, really interesting. So you went on this journey then of figuring out your core values. You worked with this guy where you sort of did this, can we figure out this with people? What were some of the things that you discovered in that process?
I think when we say core values, I think these are these parts of you that you end up going, but it is important. If you have a discussion with someone and you get them to a point of identifying a value, a true core value, you cannot in the end explain why. It is. And I think that, because we have lots of values, don't we? And our values almost change when we interact in different ways, But core values are like the pillars of your personality. And I've walked out of jobs literally because I can't be creative. I actually said, I'm sorry, I can't do any more. I can't be creative. I need to leave. And I usually these days program that in advance to give them more.
Learn that lesson.
I'm about to tell this latest group that I won't last much past July, which will be a shock because the contract's for a certain period of time. But I know past July I would have got through what I can do, and actually I need to hand the baton on. So I think discovering your core values, and there's lots of processes. People can look it up on the internet. You can go through things. You can choose words. There's systems. But I think to get to an understanding of where your meaning is, these are making parts of you, and then to notice when things go wrong. Because one way to really see a core value is to see when actually it's impinged.
Yeah.
You know, so if you, creativity, I've just told you about. I've got to go. Why? Can't make stuff any longer.
Yeah.
Or I can't change anything anymore. I've changed as much as I can, and I think I begin to know when I should stop changing things for the sake
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Because you can go, I go, no, actually, that's enough.
Yeah.
I need to hand over to someone else, or perhaps the people element dies to a certain extent, in the sense that um, you can never quite get any further with these people. You've done an exchange in honor with everyone, but actually get to a point of going, I can't do any more. That there's no more spark. Um, these are quite hard things, because it
Yeah.
sounds like you can be quite callous, and I'm not callous at all, but you do get to points. I found it particularly in coaching, actually. Um, I coached a lot of people. I think for some years I was coaching somewhere around 35 to 40 people a month, for 2-hour sessions. So it was pretty
That's pretty
intense.
intense. Yeah.
One-to-ones with people. And these were all C-suite people. So, some big CEOs, and also a lot of sort of number two general managers, stunning people. I mean, I was just in awe of some of the ways they ran their business. I had so much I could learn. But every now and again, you started engaging with someone, and after about 4 or 5 sessions, you thought, no, I can't do anything here. The fit is not for me. Um, they're great. They need to go off on their own, but I need to get out of this gig. And I'm fairly clear now about that as well. So people are essential, like we've talked about. I understand, as an entrepreneur, I cannot do it by myself, but I have to lead, because that's part of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I have to learn to delegate, and I absolutely need and thrive off other people. But there's also a point where, for your own self's sake, this core, which is where everything is built upon, you've got to move on.
Yeah.
And you don't do it callously, you do it graciously, but it's actually essential.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So for you then, it sounds like one of the things that's important to you to fill your tank is just being around people. People sort of fill your tank, right? That's how you sort of recharge your
Yes.
batteries. And obviously you've had challenges to overcome. You've had to build resilience over the last however many years, 40 odd years, in all the various different sectors. Understanding your core values and understanding how to be resilient is important in that section. So where do you see tomorrow? Where do you see the future going for you in all of this?
Well, I'm getting older, and I think I realised some of the things that I used to do. It just takes a little bit more effort every time. Um, I think I love the stimulation, but you get to a point you have to start thinking about what else is possible that doesn't require perhaps so much face to face,
Yeah.
so much intensity. So at the moment, I've got. I mean, the reason I'm on this creativity course with these wonderful people internationally was, it was a challenge, like a challenge. It's something I thought was potentially a future for me, um, and something I haven't really experienced before. I
Yeah.
mean, writing a book, creating a journal, um, finding, if you will, products that still will go out into the world to create change and possibilities, and allow other people to do their own thinking, which is for me essential.
Yeah.
As part of my success. If you said to me, what is success? It's seeing someone else do what they can do, which will be different. not necessarily better, but just different from me, and I find that quite exciting.
Yeah.
So so the future for me at the moment, I'm becoming quite conscious about, you know, I shouldn't be up at 6 every morning in the next few years. Over 70, I might want to be a little bit, you know, more rested in the morning, take the dog for a walk, enjoy breakfast with the wife,
Yeah.
things like that. So I probably need to develop another career,
Mm.
and so I will. Um,
Does that
I
scare
don't
you?
think
Because you're like you say, you're in your 70s, or you will be. You're approaching 70s
mm,
now, aren't you? You're in that
mm,
decade where
mm.
traditionally people have gone, well, bugger it, I'm going to go play golf for the rest of the, not to disparage those of listeners who have retired. Um, I guess I can never associate the word retirement with Simon O'Shaughnessy. I just can't do it. So it would not surprise me that you would reinvent your career or yourself in your 70s, and you'll probably do it with gusto, and Patty will be cheering you on and joining in, no doubt, like she normally does. But does that scare you? Does that or does that thrill you, that concept?
Both. um, I think if you push into anything,
Mm,
it's got to come with the same things that we've just talked about. I mean, it is wash and repeat.
mm,
You know, it's anything worth doing actually requires effort.
mm.
Um, Someone we both know who was very successful in a worldly sense, when he was asked, would you do it all over again, said, "Ugh, no, too hard."
Mm.
And this was towards the end of his life, and I thought that was a very telling phrase.
Yeah.
Too hard. I think you realise how much effort you have to put in.
Mm,
Can you stop? No, not really. No, not really, because it's how you're wired.
mm.
You know. Um,
I was going to say, would you
I,
actually want to stop? I don't think you would you?
no, no, not really. No, I mean, on my table at the moment here, there's a whole variety of stimuli, notebooks, stuff going on,
Mm,
because there are ideas and projects, you know, somewhere in all this. And I mean, I like it. I,
mm.
I I want to play with all this stuff. I've just got to learn to play differently.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully that's wisdom, Matt. I don't know.
But did you not find that like I'm approaching the decade of the 50s now, and I think my approach to life as I approach 50 is quite different to my life when I approach 40, and I think that's just part of aging, isn't it, or just part of I get wisdom, I suppose, and learning a little bit
Mm,
about life as you go
mm,
along. Is like how are
mm.
you going to approach it? So, right, I've got to the stage of the podcast where I'm going to introduce a new segment. I mentioned to you that you are, in fact, the guinea pig. We have a block of
Oh,
questions here, right? And I'm going to tell you, you're going to say stop. And I'm going to stop wherever you tell me to, and I'm going to whatever questions on the card we're going to ask. Okay, I think it's quite fun. So
okay.
go for it.
Stop.
Stop right there. Okay, it's an interesting question. So I'll hold it up to the camera if you're watching on YouTube, and I'll read it out loud. It says, "When do you feel lonely?"
Gosh.
That's a great
If I
question, isn't
answer,
it?
yeah, okay, I could answer that superficially, which would be in line with the interview, and say obviously without people, and I've told
Yeah,
you stories.
yeah,
Yeah. If I answered it honestly,
mm.
and this is I think one of the problems of being an entrepreneur, the answer is always.
Okay,
Yeah. And I think for me anyway, holding on to everything that's going on in the end creates a little bit of separation,
mm.
and I'm aware of it. It's not that I particularly want it or don't want it, it's just there. um, it's a bit like, if you talk to a lot of creative people and they're being really honest, there will be a moment where they admit to the old black dot,
Yeah,
depression. they're probably controlling it really well,
Yeah.
but it is there for a creative, in my opinion,
Is
and
that the balance? Is that the opposite, the yin and the yang? If you're creative, there's the depression side of that as well. It seems, out of all the creative people I know, I'd probably say that's the one thing they suffer with concurrently. It's like
yeah.
there's a tension. I don't know if that's true of everybody, but I'm just curious to know what you think.
Do they suffer with it, or is it part of the package? I mean, and I think loneliness is, I think, somewhere part of the package for a lot of entrepreneurial type of brain sets, creatives, because actually you need that experience. You need that understanding and breadth of empathy to do a lot of the stuff that you do.
Yeah.
I had a semi-argument with a psychologist on this one once, and she was a wonderful lady. I really enjoyed talking with her. And I said, oh, the black dog, it sits quietly in the corner most of the time. And she said to me, so what would it be like if we removed the black dog? And I was going to fight her. I was not letting you take that black dog away.
You will not take this away.
It's my black dog.
Yes.
And I could see this was a non sequitur for her. This was not acceptable. But I'm going, no. I can live with that as a creative. Primarily, my brain works creatively. I can live with it. I know where it is, and actually, pretty much now I can control it. I think the same is true for the loneliness. It's an aligned spirit almost that you've got to learn to recognize when it would be impairing and deal with it. But I think you live with it, or I do, in that sort of sense. And no amount of prodding. I mean, if you prod me, you'll just annoy me. Anyway, well, come on, get with it. Join the party. Well, I don't want to, thanks.
Yeah, I'm quite happy.
No. So I think my honest answer, great question. Yeah, I could have passed really, couldn't I?
Yeah. It would have been very dull though, had you have done. But no, I get that. I get that I think if you're in some form of leadership, entrepreneurship, where some kind of leadership, it can easily be a lonely place.
Yeah.
And that's why I go back to when Sharon had the breast cancer scare. I was very grateful for the people around me that actually I could talk to and confide with, because those everybody else didn't know what to do with the news. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't, people weren't being difficult or rude or any. They just didn't know what to do with it, right? But I'm grateful for the people around me that actually just put their arm around me and just went, "Man, that's crap. Let's walk through this," right? And I think. So yes, I get actually leadership and loneliness. I think are synonymous, and I think it's a tricky situation if you're a leader. So you do need to create that community, right?
When I was running CEO groups, they wonderful guys, individualistic, strong personalities. I mean, they'd eat you alive in some ways, but they also said, do you think we ought to have a T-shirt for our group? And I said, what's that? He said, CEOs are humans too.
Yeah.
And I understand. Yeah, that's it. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Yeah. There are very few people we trust ourselves to talk with, but I desperately want to talk with you because you are my friends. Yeah. And I think that's the essential little link, because most of it is not the team as far as you're concerned. It's leading the team. It's quite different. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Good question.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, very good question. So don't thank me. Thank the box of 100 questions.
We like the box.
Yeah. Woohoo! As you know, this show, right, is sponsored by Ori Media, which specializes in helping good folks like yourself set up and run their own podcast. So I'm curious, right? Let's assume Simon has the O'Shaughnessy podcast, the Catalyze podcast. Who is on your dream list of guests? Who would you really love to have on the show to interview, and why?
I'll be a bit iconic and New Zealandish here. During the first COVID bout, where things were really hitting the fan, out of the blue, and you guys won't know him, but there's a Dr. Ashley Bloomfield in New Zealand, who is the Director General of Health, and this was public servant, who stood up and actually became the face of, the COVID response in New Zealand. He was totally brilliant. In fact, I think at the end of the day, there are Ashley mugs, Ashley t-shirts.
Oh, wow.
We love Ashley. I mean, he went over in the nation so well that people could trust him. We were lucky enough because we were doing a team session every other day in the practice, a big practice, 70, 80 people. And we just took a punt and rang him up and talked to his secretary and said, do you think Ashley would come on to our Teams meeting in the morning? And he said, yes.
Oh, wow.
So the Director General of Health ends up on a little private channel talking to my group, one morning in the middle of our huddle. And I mean, he was just brilliant. And we were all in awe. In fact, one of the doctors said to me after, said, I didn't hear a word he says. I was just so overwhelmed. But I mean, and I wished I'd asked him more questions. The things that interested me was all the things we've talked about, but here's a man not like me, who does not think like me, who has a very different background. I mean, to me, how fascinating. How totally fascinating.
That's really interesting.
To have a conversation with someone like that, So, Ashley.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, when you record the episode, I'd love to hear it. That'd be brilliant. Simon, listen, it's very rare I call you Simon, I appreciate. But I thought I'd do that for the podcast. Chief, it's been brilliant to catch up and have a conversation with you and record it. Because this is normally what our conversations are like. And we just riff off of each other, which is great. If people want to connect with you, if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably LinkedIn or by my email. Yeah.
Okay. And what's your email?
Simon@catalyse.life.
Simon@catalyse.life. And of course, you can search for Simon O'Shaughnessy on LinkedIn, and you are also there, quite active on LinkedIn, or at least you used to be. Do you still do the LinkedIn thing?
I think I've had a bit of a pause on LinkedIn over the last few weeks because of this new job.
Just suck the life right out of you. Yeah.
And stupidly, I thought, oh, hold on, let me do this creativity course online as well, which requires you to blog every day. And, to do there's 3 or 4 quite chunky questions a week as well. So that's rather sat my energy. I did divert it into LinkedIn for a while, but
fair enough.
We'll get back to it.
No, fair enough. Well, it's been brilliant, Chief. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Honestly, it's been an absolute treat. Really, really appreciate it. And no doubt we will have you back on again at some point to talk about all kinds of stuff.
Something.
Yeah, something, I've no doubt. So that's it from Simon. Thank you for joining me. We will link to Simon's info in the show notes, which you can get for free along with the transcript and all that kind of stuff at pushtobemore.com, or it comes automagically to your inbox if you're signed up to the newsletter. So a big shout out to today's show sponsor. Just like that. A big shout out to today's show sponsor, Orion Media. If you're wondering if podcasting is a good marketing strategy for your business, do connect with them at orionmedia.com. That's AURION media.com. We will, of course, link to them on the Push to Be More website, and it will also be in the newsletter, which is automatically coming to you if you're signed up. Be sure to follow Push to Be More wherever you get your podcasts from, because we've got some great conversations lined up and we don't want you to miss any of them. And here's my favourite part. In case no one's told you yet today, dear wonderful listener, you are awesome. Yes, you are. It's just a burden you have got to bear. Simon has to bear it. I have to bear it. It's just the way we've been made. Push to Be More is produced by Orion Media. You can find our entire archive of episodes on your favourite podcast app. The team that makes this show possible is Sadaf Bainon, Josh Catchpole, Estella Robin, and Tim Johnson. Our theme music was written by my amazing son, Josh Edmondson. And as I mentioned, if you would like to read the transcripts and show notes, head to the website pushtobemore.com, where you can also sign up for the Automagic weekly newsletter and get all of this good stuff direct to your inbox totally free. That's it from me. That's it from Simon. Thank you for joining us. Have a fantastic week. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.